Ever since the days of Quake, developers have been slowly lowering the skill gaps in their games. A skill gap can be somewhat described by a bell curve. It's the gap between the people at the left side of the bell curve and the people at the right side of the curve. It is the difference in skill of less skilled player and an experienced skilled player, and it's why video games have been able to be competitive and have a competitive scene. When you lower the skill gap in a game, it makes it easier for the lower skill tiers to compete with the higher skill tiers, and in the last 10 years, it has happened to games such as Call of Duty, Super Smash Bros., Halo, Natural Selection, etc., etc. In this video, I'll be analyzing a few of the aforementioned cases and seeing what works or doesn't work and why. First up was Smash Bros. Since Smash 64, this game has had a lot of technical skill involved, and it's had an extremely steep learning curve. At its peak with Super Smash Bros. Melee, there was L-canceling, directional air dodging, shuffling, wave dashing, wave shining, and multi-shining, to name a few. Melee still has a large competitive scene with many dedicated fans and players, and very many people were disappointed when in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Nintendo removed directional air dodging and inserted tripping, making a very good number of the techs possible in Melee impossible. This made the learning curve much less prevalent and the difference in skill between pros and casuals very small. That being said, the steep learning curve of Melee made the game nearly impenetrable for new players, and it required a lot of dedication and practice before you could stand toe-to-toe with anyone. Nintendo said that the changes made in Brawl were made to make the game friendlier to everyone, which is understandable considering Nintendo's philosophy of making games fun first, and considering that it began as a party game and many of other Nintendo's games are more oriented around fun than skill. Brawl and Smash 4 still remain fun as games like they were meant to be. Moving on to Call of Duty. In the original 5 Call of Duties, there wasn't much skill involved in winning anyways. Lots of things killed instantly, and even if you were skilled at the game, you couldn't consistently win. With the later installments like COD Ghosts, this was further exaggerated. More instant kill tactics were put in the game, and even less skill was required to be good at the game. While there has never been a respected competitive scene for Call of Duty, it nevertheless makes the game less fun for people who play it. Activision has moved more towards a slightly higher skill gap in the latest installments, but it is still a very little change. Last but not least is Halo. Since the days of the original, a Master Chief could always pwn a Master Noob. The aiming, super weapons, and items have always provided a good mix of strategy and raw skill. Some say that the lowering of the skill gap started in Halo Reach with the added armor abilities, but I disagree. I think having to choose between them did well in changing up your playstyle, and they added something new to the series to keep things fresh. I mean, after all, it's not all that fun just getting bombarded by Banshee bombs and dying every single time. It added a solution to many things similar to that with these abilities. The aiming and movement was still tight, and noobs still got wrecked in Halo Reach. When it really began was in Halo 4, when they introduced magnetic bullets. Magnetic bullets was a system put in the game that enabled you to hit your target even if your reticle was not on your opponent. It made it so that the bullets did a little bit of a curve, so instead of going to where your reticle was pointed, if your reticle was close enough to the player you were shooting at, it would just go to the player instead. This made it much easier for lower skilled players to kill people, and for some like me, who used to be an avid Halo fan, it made the game extremely easy, and I lost interest a mere week after I started. The direction that the new 343 Studios seems to be taking Halo in isn't as much of a competitively based one. The fact that people had aim assist and magnetic bullets made the better players lose interest and encourage mediocrity. Even in Halo 5 did the skill gap decrease, with the addition of abilities like ground pound and the wall breaking thing that made the game almost like Destiny in some ways. Little of Halo's original fans are still with it because of these changes, and skilled play isn't as rewarded and isn't necessary to secure points in these games. Having a high skill gap is necessary for maintaining the attention of all players, and it works even better when there is a system to put less skilled players against less skilled players and more skilled players against more skilled players. Low skill gaps make succeeding less rewarding and make everyone able to compete against each other, and that is a boring way to play. Not everybody should be able to win against everybody. Pros should be able to dominate noobs. For a game to really thrive, there needs to be skill-based gameplay, and a feeling of satisfaction knowing that you can perform amazing feats that few others can do. Some games that are shining beacons of hope for this cynical op-ed are Counter-Strike, with a very tight aiming system and lots of strategy involved, and Rivals of Aether, which takes on ideas from Melee but makes the learning curve more manageable because it doesn't require as much technical knowledge. But it still keeps a clear difference between skilled players and scrubs.
And then the Bowblade showed up in the trailer.